So Brutus number one, basically that's a document which they're against against having a federal government. He actually believes in having pure state sovereignty. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Got it? And so moving along, I mean, do you guys have questions? I could review everything, or you could ask questions about AP.
And do you think that we could do like a review of all like different terms like Federalist 71 and Brutus 1 and all those different documents, like the pre-midterm review that you just showed us? Can we do something like that?
We can do whatever you want. Let's take a look at this. We just did Brutus number one, which again, I spelled Brutus wrong. That's why I didn't show it. See, right over here, it's on my document right over here. Let's actually go through this document. This is a pretty good document, but you're right. Knowing the documents are very important. So Brutus number one.
Excuse me. I think Saul has a question.
Saul has a question too. Go ahead.
I think so.
We took the midterm. You gave us these 18 pages?
I sure did. I'll send it to you.
I remember it.
I typed it up. I have it. I typed them.
Okay, good.
What's it called? Not typed them. What's it called?
Copy them.
Printed them.
I mean, it's very ironic that everything that we did by the midterm is all you're being tested on. Because
So can I use that to cheat on the test? I'm serious. Okay, just in case. I
am going to give you the best advice that I can give.
YouTube
has
a thing.
I didn't hear you. Anyhow, I don't know what you're talking about.
Mr. Gibberkey, you might get a phone call from me like during the test. You might.
I'm teaching a class then, so.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, or science.
So tell them. Wait 5 seconds. I'm having a very important phone call.
This is not Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We can phone in a friend.
Oh dear.
Do you even know what I'm talking about? Anyhow.
Yeah, you get the phone. Yeah, remember you saw that guy who called his dad and told him I don't really need your help.
Right, let's stay focused up. Seriously. All right. So, but yeah, this review sheet, and I'll send it out again. It's a good review sheet. What can I tell you? All right. But Brutus number one, basically, they were against a strong Federalist government. Now, all the Federalist papers, and that's actually a good thing to have handy for the test.
You're allowed to take it on the test?
How are they gonna know?
What do you think?
Yes, how are they gonna know?
They let you cheat? Because my principals may tell me no, but if they tell me that it's legal, then I'll go for it.
Like I said, I'm not getting involved. What I will say though is those 18 pages has a lot of good information.
Will I be able to do what you're doing on my laptop?
What's that?
So if I have this on my laptop, right? Can I search up certain words and it'll like bring me straight up?
This is very. Here's what you do. Let me actually email it right now so I don't forget. Let me go.
I have it, Silver. You have it?
I have it in my email, but I want to just check up if I could do the search thing. I'm sure my parents will know how, but it's Command A. You said?
Say again.
You said it's Command A, which no, that selects all.
Command F.
I don't have a thing. I think I have a Chromebook. Yeah, I have a Chromebook.
Oh, that's so cool.
I feel bad for you.
Oh, that is so cool.
No, not because it's cool or not. I don't know how to use it.
It doesn't get all of them though. It's not so good.
What do you mean?
It doesn't get. I put an I and it doesn't get all the I's. That's really weird. Oh no, it's a J.
It should work.
Word.
All right, so let's get back on focus. You were asking about Federalist papers. Those are actually very, very important as well. So
thank you for that.
Jump down. Actually, go back up. So right over here, you have all the Federalist papers. These are the big ones. Federalist 10, critics of the Constitution that proposed the federal government was too large. So in response,
similar to Brutus.
Say again.
Similar to Brutus.
No. He was talking. So over here, Madison was arguing against Brutus, say, here's the thing. All the Federalist Papers are in favor of a strong government. And so he was saying, he was giving a counter argument saying, no, don't worry about a strong government because you have all these factions, they will avoid a tyranny. In other words, they're afraid, if you go back to Brutus, let's go back to Brutus for a second.
Which writing thing are you using?
All right, so look over here. Brutus voiced a concern shared by many others. Could a widely dispersed and diverse people be united under one government without sacrificing the blessing of liberties and self-government? Brutus's powerful argument prompted Federalists to articulate, which means to defend, a more thorough explanation of what the Constitution meant and why it should be ratified, okay? And then when you look at the Federalists, so over here he was saying, oh, don't worry about the strong government, all the different factions. Who are the factions? Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Tea Partyists, Libertarians. They're going to argue the different point of views, and they'll make sure there's no tyranny. What is a tyranny? A tyranny means that only one person has control, okay? Just like Federalist 51 talks about how you're going to have checks and balances to make sure that nobody has all the power, which is true. You have Congress, you have the Congress and Senate, which is under one branch, the lawmakers. You have the judicial, which is the judges. Of course, you have the executive, which is the president. Now, Federalist 51, right, that was Federalist 51. Federalist number 70 talks about the importance of having a strong executive leader, because basically he talks about what a disaster it was under the Articles of Confederation, where you had the weak leader. Okay.
The president couldn't do. Well, what could the president do? He can't even do anything. Everything needs to be passed by Congress and Senate.
Well, president can do a lot. President has
executive order.
The president has the bully's pulpit where they can get on TV and influence people. Trump, for example, is very effective at using the bully's pulpit. He does like to get on TV. He likes to have the rallies. The thing that he misses most about things under the corona is he loves to have those rallies, and right now he can't, okay? But ordinarily, president can have a lot of power. They declare national emergencies, as has been done 56 times in the United States history, okay? Now, so you talked about the Federalist Papers. We talked about Brutus. What else do you want to know? You tell me.
Just if we could do, how long do we have? We have 10 minutes? If we could just fly through it all.
If you want to go overtime, you can. The rest of the students can leave at 4:30. All right, so we'll go from the start. So John Locke was one of the founders. He believed in protecting life, liberty, and property. Thomas Hobbes. I don't think they'll do much of that. Saul, you raised your hand. Let me just keep the two of you unmuted at this point. Go ahead.
Okay. Do you see the screen clear or no?
Let me actually try to zoom in. There's a way to do it. Okay. Let me see if I drag it over here, whether that will work. I see it, sort of, yeah.
Okay. What do I press to do what you're doing when searching the thing? And
don't you have a Control F on your Chrome?
I could press Control F.
Yeah, try Control F. That should work.
Oh, that's so cool. So,
I told you, right?
You said Control A.
No,
Control A is for selecting all. Control F is to find things.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. I got it. Thank you.
This is the things that I wanted to teach you guys had they had computers. But anyhow.
Computer science.
Some of these stuff I actually happen to know because my parents are graphic designers.
Who's graphic designers?
My parents. So like
my wife used to be a graphic designer too, by the way. Okay, so in any case, this is pretty easy. With
what's direct democracy?
Direct democracy is where you let the people make a decision. We don't have a direct democracy, by the way. The idea is like when you have a referendum or initiative, that's a form of direct democracy. But we have a representative democracy. We elect people, and then
And still nothing gets done.
And they're supposed to get things done, okay?
But they don't.
There are different models, there are different theories of democracy. Jean-Jacques Rousseau wanted direct democracy, social contract, laws are only binding if they support the people. Popular sovereignty is government that is created and subject by the will of the people. But the reality is, the reason why we don't have that was because the Federalists, who had a very strong, they don't really trust the people. They think the people are crazy. So basically, they wanted to represent. By the way, when we had popular sovereignty, which we'll talk about next year, a couple of times, it was a big disaster. Okay, that caused bloody Kansas. We'll talk about that next year, though. Anyhow, so we actually have a representative democracy where you elect officials, so forth. Okay, I mean, all these different models, like the participatory, where people directly vote on laws. Every so often we have that, like if they decide to have a referendum or initiative, but that's sort of the exception to the rule than the rule, okay? The elite democracy, we have a little bit of that, where they say a lot of people are making...
What's pluralist?
So I'll get to the pluralist in a second. I sort of skipped around, I understand. So the elite democracy, that's like when you let the business people in the military or the labor unions make decisions, okay? Sometimes you have bureaucrats that are doing those kind of things, okay? Sometimes. I mean, some people, Trump would call that the deep state. Like he's saying, these people weren't elected, yet they're making decisions, okay? Now, is there a deep state? A little bit, but for the most part, it's really the elected officials that have the power. We don't really have an elite democracy. Sometimes we have a small piece of that. Now, pluralist democracy is where non-governmental groups, different people like interest groups are trying to make decisions. Now, do we have interest groups like the NRA or the ACLU trying to help make decisions? Yeah, to a certain extent they do. All right. John Peter Zenger, of course, that's the very famous case where they were going to throw him. They did throw him in jail because he said some not nice things, and they had a libel suit. And basically, he fought, and they acquitted him. So he basically, that established freedom of press. Montesquieu, he was the guy that had the theory that you should have, these separate governments like a legislature for law, executive, the president, the judiciary for judge. In other words, Montesquieu, these are like, guys that are theorists before they had an actual U.S. government, but this sort of laid the foundation for what would become our government. Now, Thomas Paine, he was the guy who basically wrote that common sense document that, that if they're treating you like garbage, it makes sense for you to rebel. And so while Thomas Paine was not the guy who wrote the Declaration of Independence, you could say that Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence was influenced by Thomas Paine. And then, of course, the main points of the Declaration of Independence: all men are created equal. Men are given, by God, unalienable rights. In other words, you have to remember everyone was very religious then. So, so God gives you these unalienable rights. And then we have the natural right by God to declare our independence from England, okay? Those were the big things that, we're created equal, and we have rights, and we have the right to declare our independence, okay? And so that was the big thing. Articles of Confederation, if you remember, so we win the American Revolution.
So anybody that's an atheist is going against the Constitution and can be thrown into jail?
You have to understand, in the 1700s, it was unfathomable to be an atheist.
These days, anybody that's an atheist, anybody that's a proclaimed atheist is going against the Constitution, can be thrown in jail. They're corrupting the society. They're influencing people.
All right. So, Joseph, great point. But here's the thing. That's not the Constitution. The Declaration of Independence precedes the Constitution. The Declaration of Independence is 1786. The Constitution is in 1789. So you can say they're going against the Declaration of Independence, but not the Constitution. That's different. Okay, but very sharp. Okay, so after the Declaration of Independence, we win the war. we have the Articles of Confederation. And remember, they did not trust the government. So they deliberately wrote a document where the states would have all the sovereignty, they would have all the power. So the government had no power to raise funds. The Army or Navy, they didn't have control of currency. So in New Jersey, you had one money. In New York, you had another money, et cetera, et cetera. We could not tax, no tariffs. There was no executive, president to enforce laws. Basically, the central government had zero powers. And as you know, Shays' Rebellion happened where these farmers, basically an armed militia, rebelled against the government. Everyone was freaking out. They got some local...
5,000 killed?
Say again?
Was it like 5,000 killed or something?
It's not a question about whether anyone was killed or not. It's about the fact that there was this crisis where they realized that we got to do something to have control. And this made everyone realize that, well, why don't we instead have this constitution? And so they right away had the Constitutional Convention. And so during the Constitutional Convention, what happens? Small states were concerned that they would be underrepresented. And then the big states felt, the small states wanted a strong government. And then the big states wanted the states to have control. And so they had a compromise. Because, for example, the small states have very little people, so they're going to have less representation. The big states have more people, so they'll have more representation. So what was the compromise? They said, we're going to have a bicameral government, a bicameral Congress. So that means you have Congress and Senate. Now, so what's the difference between Congress and Senate? You tell me.
Congress has more representatives per the amount of occupants of the state.
And
the Senate, on the other hand, has 2 per state.
Exactly. And then the other thing was, so the slave states were concerned that you're not going to count the slaves, right?
3/5.
And so, what did that mean? It meant that the slave, for counting purposes, for representation, would count as 3/5 of a person. Okay. Now, by the way, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment nullified that idea. Now, the Anti-Federalists, the guys who wrote Brutus,
were they allowed to vote for themselves, or their owners had more votes?
So again, until we pass the 15th Amendment, so remember, 13th Amendment, I'm skipping around a little bit. 13th Amendment abolished slavery. 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. 15th Amendment gave you the right to vote. And so, no, slaves did not have the right to vote until the 15th Amendment was passed in the 1860s. Okay? So meanwhile, Anti-Federalists were concerned about too powerful a government, like we talked about in Brutus 1. And so that's why a compromise was they would pass a Bill of Rights that these are your rights, okay? Now, we already talked about what Federalist 10 and Brutus 1 was, and Federalist 51 and Brutus 70. So they
did what? The Anti-Federalists, so they made, since they were Anti-Federalists, they got the Articles of something?
Well, initially we had, no, so remember, the Articles of Confederation
failed.
Precedes the anti-federal.
2-week government.
This is during the Constitutional Convention that the Anti-Federalists are still against strong government, even after the Articles of Confederation. They did not want a strong government. And so the Anti-Federalists argued with their Brutus papers, saying that the government will be too strong. The Federalists argued for a strong government. Okay? One of the compromises that they made to the Anti-Federalists was, okay, we'll pass a Bill of Rights.
Thank you.
The Bill of Rights basically gives us, the people, rights. Okay, so, and again, we already discussed all the Federalist papers, so I'm going to skip ahead now. Constitutional concepts. What is the elastic clause?
Oh, they could interpret it.
So in a sense, yes, but the most famous elastic clause is, it says that Congress will get any additional powers that are necessary and proper. In other words, if you read the Constitution, you will find nowhere does it say that the Congress has the right to raise taxes. So how did they get the right to raise taxes? Based on the elastic clause of necessary and proper, later on, the Supreme Court, to use a word, darshaned that they do have the right to tax because of
Why
the
was it
necessary
necessary?
and proper clause. Okay?
Why was it necessary?
The reason why it was necessary was because in order to raise an army and run a government, you have to have money. Every time you fight a war, how are you going to fight a war if you don't have any money? It doesn't work. Okay? So, checks and balances, we all understand what that is, right?
Like each different party could, not party, each like a branch could, like, they have to like measure the other ones. They could like not, they have to like approve it.
Right. So in other words, you need one branch. You can't pass a law without both Congress and Senate agreeing on it. And then you can't pass a law without the president agreeing on it. Jack, go ahead. Let me try again.
Can I go use the bathroom, please?
All right, go ahead quickly. Anyhow, so now there's another
But
concept.
the what's it called? The Supreme Court doesn't have any checks and balances to interpret the Constitution.
Yes, they do because yes, they do because the Supreme Court can interpret whether something is constitutional or not. So
right, that's what I'm saying. But nobody else could stop them from saying that that breathing is unconstitutional.
But they actually could stop them by writing a new amendment, number one, and they can't argue against an amendment, or they could pass a new law that does follow the Constitution. Okay, so
They're fine with that.
Say again?
Okay, good.
Okay, so now, speaking of which, loose constructionists versus strict constructionists. What is that?
No
Don't
clue.
know.
What's that?
Don't know. Strict
Okay,
constitutionist.
let's go over this. The strict constructionists, as I like to say, they're very machmer. They read the Constitution literally. They say you have to follow exactly what the Constitution says. Okay, and usually we're talking about judges. Judges, typically Republican judges,
Conservatives.
are usually strict constructionists, but that's not necessarily true always. Okay, whereas a loose constructionist, they believe, for example, in the necessary proper clause. They like to interpret things. By the way, Thomas Jefferson was a strict constructionist. Alexander Hamilton was a loose constructionist. But if you recall, when they wanted to purchase the Louisiana Purchase, even though Jefferson said, well, the Constitution doesn't really give me a right to purchase the Louisiana Purchase, right? But he realized, wait a minute, I could double the size of my country. So then he decided, okay, I'll be a loose constructionist because it was good for the country. But even though someone says they're a strict constructionist, Jefferson being a very strict constructionist, sometimes they switch teams because they realize it just makes sense, okay? And so, like I said, usually Republicans are strict, usually Democrats are loose, but that's not always true. Sometimes they switch teams because it just makes sense. But in general, we understand what a strict versus loose constructionist. Strict constructionist, they read the Constitution literally. The loose constructionist loves the elastic clause. Okay, Now, what is the unwritten Constitution?
It's not in the Constitution yet. Well, it's not in the Constitution yet. We still do it, like a super PAC.
A super PAC that's a great example. Yet it's a big part of what we do. Okay, so moving along. The Supreme Court, we know, has the power to review federal laws. That's known as judicial review. We also...
This is still part of constitutional concepts?
Again?
This is still part of constitutional concepts?
Yes, we're still in a lot of constitutional concepts, okay? We also know that, of course, the legislative branch passes laws. We know the president must be 35 years old. They must be born. There was a tradition of only having 2 terms in office. Franklin Delano Roosevelt broke that tradition. In 1951, they passed the 22nd Amendment, which limits the president to 2 terms in office, okay? Now, we have what's called dual federalism. In other words, President Trump has federal power, and then the states have powers. That's why you hear Governor Cuomo saying things and other governors, because just like Trump has power, the 50 governors also have powers. We live in a dual federal system where both the state has federal powers sometimes, and of course the executive has federal powers.
So
Now,
like the Trump would say that like he's putting out a plan to open up, but the states have a right to choose it or make their own.
if you notice, Trump is not ordering them to do things. He's just giving them a recommendation, okay? And like because he understands that there's dual federalism. Like if he wants to have them do something, he could try to do it by executive order, but then they'll challenge it in court, so it's not a good idea. Or he can have them write a law, but in other words, he can't do that exclusively because we have dual federalism, okay? Now, we also have some other concepts in the Constitution. We have popular sovereignty, where supreme power rests with the people. The Constitution sometimes gives us popular sovereignty. We also know that according to the Constitution, the Electoral College chooses the president, not the popular vote. In other words, some people may not like that, but the Constitution says that.
What's sovereignty? Popular sovereignty? That's like what we said before. Participatory democracy
It's
or
the will of the people, popular sovereignty. Now, by the way, until the 17th Amendment was passed, it was the state legislature that chose the Senate. The 17th Amendment, by the way, amended that. Now, limited government. We believe that the government is not all powerful. Separation of powers, we've already talked about, how you have 3 different branches. We talked about checks and balances. We talked about judicial review. We talked about federalism. We know what the legislative is.
right.
They passed the laws, the necessary and proper clause. We talked about. There's also an idea of
No,
no ex post facto laws, which by the way, at this point it's 4:30. So for those students that are not taking the AP exam, you can go. If Yosef and Saul want to hang out for a little longer, I'll continue to teach you guys voluntarily. Okay?
Thank you.
Anyhow, so yeah, let's try to cover a little more. So no ex post facto laws. We understand. Joey, you got a question? No, you say goodbye. Okay, so no ex post facto laws. We understand that you can't write a law after the fact and say we're going to punish you for that. There's also an idea that you are not allowed to suspend habeas corpus. Okay.
Lincoln did that.
Lincoln did that. It was very controversial.
In the war.
And habeas
right?
corpus, by the way, by the way, what is habeas corpus?
How do you spell it?
You don't give him a trial.
That's the right to a trial. So you're not allowed to suspend that. But Lincoln did that during the Civil War. By the way, you should know it was challenged in Supreme Court. Obviously, they lost that. Now, emoluments clause. Okay, basically, technically speaking, it says no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. No, in other words, this is a technical question. I don't think they'll ask it on the test. But can foreign dignitaries go to Trump Hotel?
Oh, they
Why
had
not?
that in the things.
Technically, the answer is, according to the emoluments clause, they're not.
Why not? Of course they're allowed to.
But
They chose that hotel over a different hotel.
But by the way, technically speaking, some scholars believe it's not. I don't think they'll ask you such a question. I certainly hope they don't. But
That's such a liberal thing.
If they ask that kind
it.
of if they ask that kind of question, how are you gonna write a paragraph on that?
Go as liberal as you can get.
the way I would handle it is I would say, according to the emoluments clause, it says basically that no person holding office can profit or can gain profit without the consent of Congress. And I would say it is not clear if that would include dignitaries visiting the president's hotel. However, some scholars may argue that it is, whereas some scholars would say it is not. So in other words, you can argue both sides. You could say it's a good question. I'm not sure which way it would go. But in other words, you just acknowledge that there's an emoluments clause. Okay? Now,
how many amendments do we have?
So right now, we're not even talking about the amendments. However, we have 27.
Would it be on the test?
You never know. They'll most likely ask about the popular amendments, which we'll talk about. Okay?
Because you know what I'm doing. You know what I'm doing right now. We're like copying and pasting all the amendments on the Google Docs. So I'll have the amendments like in order if they ask me.
It's in my document, by the way. You know that.
All of them? Because I searched up 17th Amendment. I didn't get it.
Well, actually, it was above here. We just talked about the 17th Amendment.
17th Amendment.
Right over here. Okay. It's there.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Now, I don't talk about every amendment. I only talk about the popular ones, by the way. All right. So, executive branch, what does it say in Congress? It says president can appoint people to many positions. We know that. However, they must have the advice. In other words, president can appoint anybody, but they have to get the reshus of the Senate for some positions. By the way, some positions are so low level, the president just appoints them. The important positions, the
Like
president
judge, right?
has to get reshus. Okay. Now, all you
Like
have
the judge?
say again.
Like judge?
Certainly a Supreme Court judge for sure. Okay, but even like when they have Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Secretary, all those positions that are cabinet level positions, by the way, require the permission of the Senate. Okay, now judicial branch, we know that there's only one Supreme Court. Judicial branch, of course, reviews the cases, including treason against the United States. Okay, now we also know there's a relation among states, that states must grant each other full faith and credit. In other words, they have to work with each other. Let's move along. The amendment process, basically, it talks about how you pass an amendment. Now we get into the amendments, okay? You were asking about the amendments on the bottom of page 4. So I see over here there's a message. Let me see. Is someone saying something?
No, I just sent. I was typing
okay,
everything
okay.
over. I was
Just
sending it for Saul.
Sometimes I don't even see the chats. Okay, so first 10 amendments. Those
I
are
didn't get anything.
all right.
On the chat.
Yeah, I didn't get
You have to
anything.
click on the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on it.
So in any case, you just click on the 3 dots and you should see it.
Yeah, more chat. But I didn't get maybe it went to you. I didn't get it. Hey, look.
Go to
Is
more.
there like a limit of
Go
like
from
words?
silver to everyone. I can always download it and send it to you guys later.
That's fine.
Not a big deal. Okay.
Just email it.
So first 10 amendments, freedom of speech, press, and religion, that's a big one. Second Amendment, we know, right to bear arms, no quartering of soldiers, freedom
Hold on.
for unreasonable search and seizures. You guys know what all those 4 are, right? Those are
Oh,
pretty.
not yet.
Go ahead, take your time.
Sorry, 1 second. I just want to get these 3 arms. Quartering means holding them in the house.
Yes. Well, that's when the soldiers would take over your house.
They did that during the Civil War.
No, that was it was actually it's never been done because they did it prior. The British used to do it, so this was like sort of a dig against the British. So
They did it the whole Civil War. The soldiers were, when they ever took over the South or North, they would take the houses. No.
No, it's not
Okay.
like that. You go to like the citizens, right? And you tell them, oh, you have to like house us here for like the army.
Right, but they actually did not do that during the Civil War. But the idea was they did a lot of other things, but not that. All right.
Okay.
So freedom for unreasonable searches and seizures. We understand what that is.
Yeah.
That's why they have to have a warrant when they search your car or your house. Okay. Right to due process of law.
Habeas corpus.
There you go. Freedom of self-incrimination. In other words, if someone asks
Plead
you,
the fifth.
exactly, very good. And
That's the number one.
and you know what double jeopardy is, right?
No.
All
No.
right, so double jeopardy is if they have a case and they prove that you're innocent, they can't try you again.
Oh, yeah, it's the best thing.
So very famously, O.J. Simpson was found innocent, right? A lot of people were angry. They wanted him to be tried again. That's not the way the Constitution works. You can't try someone again for the same crime just because you didn't like the verdict.
Can't they go to a higher court? Can't they insist on going to a higher court?
No.
So
Bottom line is double jeopardy. If you're innocent, you're innocent.
No, but sometimes like new evidence comes.
Doesn't matter. It's let me explain to you why it doesn't matter, and then we're going to move on. The reason why it doesn't matter is because the bottom line is it's not my problem that the prosecution did a lousy case. I should be held accountable because they did a lousy case. Does that make sense?
No.
It's not my problem. It really isn't. By the way, OJ prosecution did a horrible case. And that's why he got off scot-free. They did something so stupid, which is not important, but the bottom line was he got off scot-free. Now, they did try him again in civil court, and they sued him, and they got money. But they couldn't try him for murder again. Too bad. All right? Sixth Amendment, that's basically a right to a speedy and public trial. Seventh Amendment, right of trial by jury. Eighth Amendment, you have freedom from excessive bail, cruel and unusual punishment.
Isolation. What's it called?
You mean you're talking when what they did to the people out of country?
No, what they're still doing. What they did to the people out of the country is fine. There's no problem with that. It's the people that are in the country, the people that they keep in a cell 4x6 for 24 hours straight.
They're not really supposed to do that. That's right.
They do
No,
that.
isn't that called solitary confinement?
Solitary confinement. That's what the country does.
Okay, so unless you show a reasonable justification, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, but don't they have black ops and the CIA and all that stuff?
Again, there are different situations where we do different things, but for the most part, no. By the way, you're not even supposed to do the waterboarding, but we did that anyway. There's a lot of
we
stuff.
should have done that. That was completely fine because the guy was about. If there's a terrorist, then you torture him. If you know that he has friends that are gonna bomb up the World Trade Center.
I want to keep this on focus, so we're going to move forward. Okay. All right. So Ninth Amendment, other rights for people, whatever they was not designated, that they don't talk about those rights. Those are other rights. 10th Amendment, any powers that were not discussed, that's reserved for the state. And now we get into what we call the two most famous Supreme Court cases. They love these cases. Marbury versus Madison. Okay.
Judicial review.
Marbury versus Madison basically established the principle of judicial review. Got it?
Scam.
Okay.
Wait, what did you say? Marty versus Madison and what?
Marbury versus
Judicial
Madison.
review.
So in this case, basically,
Oh, okay.
I mean, I can go over the whole case, but the main principle was, number one, what happened was they wanted to appoint a judge or whatever it was, and however, there was a new president. The new president didn't want to appoint that judge from the previous president, and so they said basically that the Judiciary Act was unconstitutional. That, in other words, the new president has a right to pick their own dudes. Okay, they don't have to, but at the same time, they also snuck in this idea of judicial review that the they basically gave themselves a lot of power, saying that we have the right to decide what's constitutional or not. In other words, technically it's in the Constitution, but that's how they really established it. They always love to ask about Marbury versus Madison. All right, so then it cut off, but it's McCulloch versus Maryland. And again, this was the idea of could a state tax the federal government? And the answer was, of course, no. Only Congress can tax the federal government. And how did we do that? The elastic clause.
Scam.
See how that all connects? But the idea was a state does not have the right to tax the federal government. Only Congress has that right. And basically, how did they make that permissible? Under the elastic clause. Okay? So these two cases, Marbury versus Madison and McCulloch versus Maryland, I don't know why I didn't type in McCulloch, but it is McCulloch versus Maryland. These are like the two most important.
These are amendments?
No. These are two of the most famous Supreme Court cases.
So I'm confused. Why are they under? Okay. No, sorry, just the numbers. I thought they
I
were
only showed the first
continuation.
10 amendments, the Bill of
Right.
Rights, and then I move on to Marbury versus Madison, and then McCulloch versus Maryland. Okay? Now,
Mhm.
powers of the federal and state government. So we know you can print money, you regulate interstate and international trade, you make treaties, you declare wars. Although now, because of the War Powers Act of 1973, the president must get
60 days. He has 30 or 60 days, something like that.
right, 6 days, you're
Bush's
right.
3-day war.
And they can get a 30-day extension as well.
How do they get a 30-day extension?
They could say, I need 30 more days to wrap up this war. But after that, all bets are off.
So rather they have 90 days.
Yeah, I mean, again, very famously, President Bush, wrapped up the war in 45 days
Right.
against Iraq. Very smart. By the way, Bush, too, got reshus from Congress before he declared war on Iraq because his war obviously lasted more than 60 days. Okay? Now, we have shared power. Now, states
Could you
own powers. They issue licenses. They regulate commerce within the state. They collect taxes. They build roads.
This is reserved?
So
This is
reserve
reserved to the
power
states?
to issue licenses and regulate interstate commerce. The shared powers, we collect taxes, we build roads, we operate courts of law, and we borrow money, okay? So if you think about it, both the federal and state government collect taxes. By the way, the city also collects taxes. Both the federal and state government build roads. Both the federal and state operate courts of laws. They both borrow money, okay?
Could the states borrow money from the federal? Like from the
Actually, okay, so here's the thing. The states borrow
PPP.
money in a sneaky way. What they do is they sell these bonds where you can invest in the state bond, and you in 10 years or 20 years from now, you get
like war bonds.
Say again?
Like war bonds.
Right. So the state has their own way of borrowing money. Now, it's not like the federal government who can borrow a lot more money, although there is a cap. In other words, if the federal government reaches the limit of borrowing money, then they have to have Congress raise the cap again.
They already borrowed $20 trillion.
Well, historically, we've borrowed $20 trillion, and in the last 2 months, we've probably borrowed another $3 trillion at this point.
To give to people unemployment and
Coronavirus.
stuff.
So I'm sure they're gonna break the cap again.
Who do we borrow from?
China.
China, basically.
China started it. They should pay for it.
Well,
It wouldn't be. That's not a bad idea.
We're gonna stay out of that. Now I'm gonna skip the Alien and Sedition Act because they're not likely to ask that on the test. Okay. Now the 17th Amendment we already discussed. National concerns and state obligations. So the national concerns and state obligations of state and federal government generally follow dual federalism, which we already talked about. However, sometimes we have a need to add power. So we created the FBI as an example. Supreme Court blocked Congress from prohibiting companies from forcing children to work. Because in other words, initially, children used to work. FDR, New Deal, passed laws like Fair Labor Standards Act, which basically decided 8-hour days and things like that. Sometimes, because of national concerns, we expand our power. Now, we already know about the Electoral College. You guys understand the Electoral College, so I'm going to skip over that. Okay, U.S. Supreme Court, we understand what that is. Chief Justice John Marshall, he was the guy that established judicial review. We understand that. Congress, we understand that it's a bicameral design. There are two houses, the Congress and the Senate. Congress has 2 years. Senate has 6 years. Each congressional district must have 700,000 people. Every 10 years, they reapportion it. So right now, we have the Census Bureau. In other words, based on how many people fill out the census, they might decide that New York should have less votes and Florida should have more. By the way, that's been the trend. A lot of people have been leaving New York, and so used to be New York had more votes than Florida. Now it's the other way around. Okay, so it all depends. By the way, Nevada has doubled its size in the last 20 years, so they now have more electoral votes. All right, so
They're still small, no?
Nevada?
Yeah.
I mean, relatively speaking to New York, yes. I'm just talking about with the census, every 10 years, it will adjust the size of our power. All right. So who wins elections? We understand that usually incumbents win elections. So, for example, even though Governor Cuomo, a lot of people don't like him. They don't. But the fact of the matter is, because he's been the governor for so long, he keeps winning. A lot of people don't like their Congress member. Same idea, they usually win again. However, midterm elections, often whoever is in power, the opposing party wins. So we know in 1994, Clinton was president, Republicans won. 2006, Bush was president.
This is for Congress.
Yes, Democrats won Congress. Obama was president in 2010. Who won? The Republicans. Trump was president in 2018. Who won? Democrats. So it's very common that during the midterm elections, the opposing party wins. We know that a lot of times that you run campaigns through advertising, and people spend lots and lots of money.
Millions and millions.
Millions and millions. Now, pork barrel, what is that? So if you think about
No
a pig,
idea.
I'm going to tell you. So hopefully when I explain this, you'll remember it.
Yeah.
If you think about a pig, right? Besides the fact that it's trade, a pork.
Oh, we learned this. They used pork barrel with the gun, and they painted it with pig fat.
Right. The idea is
No. That's a Sepoy rebellion.
But the idea.
Not the Sepoy rebellion.
But think about this: pork,
Something else.
a pig is fat, right? And so what?
Yeah.
So the idea is that you're going to put all this fat in a barrel, and it's not really a necessary thing. But in other words, they say that you're going to give me this pork barrel where if you agree to sign my bill, I'll sneak in a little project for you to pay for a bridge or a road or infrastructure. By the way, a lot of times you might ask, why did that Republican agree to that bill? They don't really like those things. So they actually wrote an amendment in the bill saying, look, if you agree to if you agree to pass this bill, we'll throw in some pork barrel. So for example, you might ask, how come Republicans signed on to a lot of things that Clinton did? They did, by the way. So Clinton was very smart. He put in a lot of pork barrel. He would say, look, if you agree on my bill to do 7-day waiting periods for guns, I'm going to give you 100,000 cops. Not 100,000, but you get the idea.
Yeah, it's like deals.
Money to hire more cops. I'm going to give you the reshus to get tough on crime and lock up people in jail, which he did.
That's legal?
Say again?
It's legal?
It's totally legal because it was in the bill. I mean, by the way, if you actually look at the 1994 Crime Bill Act, it was extremely, some people say that because of Clinton, they threw in over 3 million black people in the jail.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
Also, with the president did, what's it called? Search and frisk and something?
That was Bloomberg.
Yeah.
And he's an idiot. He said he regrets it.
Actually, it goes back to Giuliani. Bloomberg just continued it.
But he was known for it.
Right. What Giuliani did was based on an idea called broken windows. That if there's a small broken window, take care of the problem while you arrest the guy for breaking the window. It turns out that they're also smoking pot, and they robbed a liquor store the other day. Anyhow,
your papers now, it goes on how many chapters? Like what number chapter is this midterm?
We're
paper
almost
on?
done. We did this recently.
It covers everything that you have to know, literally.
Yeah, like what chapter does it end?
In the book, it's units 1 through 3. In other words, I take this book over here, and you should know that.
Thank you very much for all of this, by the way.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you for staying.
You're lucky that I enjoy, it's very funny. I actually enjoy reading this stuff. My wife.
Yeah, did you finish the book yet? I remember when you said you were going to finish the book.
I finished the book. I had so many other books that I read, It's enjoyable.
Become a politician. I'll vote for you.
You vote for me.
And Shalou will murder anybody that tries to stop you.
The book, actually, it's chapters 1 through 9, if you were wondering. Okay?
All right.
This review is perfect.
next year we have the U.S. history book. Anyhow,
No, I don't think I'm gonna take another AP class.
well, next year you just do a regular. Well, you'll get the credit for this. You don't need
What
that.
is it? 2 credits?
It's 3 credits.
3, nice.
Yeah, college
could do-
course,
I could-
3 credits.
We could clip.
It's not even about how many credits. It's just bragging rights that you did this in high school.
Oh, really?
It's bragging rights. You can, when you apply for college, you go, oh, look at this kid. He took AP, and he passed it. I mean, first of all, it's bragging rights more than anything else. I mean, it's nice to get college credit too, but truthfully, it's really about bragging rights. To be honest with you. All right, but that
We could theoretically get what's it called next year, the Regents diploma, the advanced. You said we need eight regents or something for that.
you actually need 9. It's 8
Nine.
plus the lote, which is Hebrew. By the way, if I'll just say this, and because of COVID-19,
Get a
We-
3
yeah, we-
points.
Yeah.
any regions that you take this year, you as long as you pass the class, you get a
But we can't
So
decide now
so-
to switch to the class. We can't decide.
It doesn't
now,
matter. It
can
doesn't
we?
matter.
no.
Now
Aren't you
I
taking,
automatically have
aren't
5
you
now.
taking chemistry and you're taking
Oh, we get a chemistry regent.
Exactly. I was gonna fail
No
that.
way.
Well, let me ask
Oh,
you,
that's
and wait a minute,
awesome.
hold on. There's another thing you should know. Any class that you passed in the past, but you failed the regents, if you tell the rabbi that it was your intention to take it again, they have to pass you on that regents.
Oh, he told him
So
to call for that.
for example, anybody who failed earth science with me last year, the regents, can now get a regents pass.
I'm gonna call.
But-
So it's easier. It's easier to get a what's it called? Regents Plus. Whatever it's
Advanced.
called.
Advanced regents
Yeah.
diploma. So in other words, if you guys, and tell this to your friends too, like if they failed biology, algebra 2, whatever it is, you might as well cash in.
Mr. Gunicke, you said something like if you work during the summer, then you would be able to get an extra one. And since we have COVID, we're going to be able to get it if we do like the jobs thing this year.
Oh, you said we don't have to do it because of COVID.
Right. So we're actually you guys already took the career thing with me. So you already have 108 hours of career hours, and we're going to give you the 54 hours of work-based learning already.
So what does that mean? Does that mean that we get an extra regents point?
It means, well, you guys probably don't. Well, you guys might need it as a +1, so
Right.
that could work out. That you could, like, in other words, if you need a 9th regents, that can count as your 9th regents. So that could
Instead
work
of the Hebrew,
No, you still got to do the Hebrew.
we have to do a language.
You must do a language, otherwise they don't.
I'm gonna fail the language though.
We can't do English.
It has to be it's called LOTE, language other than English.
Hmm.
You
So we
have
could
to do
take. Okay, so we could take the Okay, so sorry, algebra, biology, earth science, chemistry, English. Then we have the Hebrew and a +1. That's 7.
Now,
What am
for
I
those
missing?
kids that completed Hebrew, if they were going to take the LOTE this year, they also get LOTE credit.
Nice.
Okay.
Earth science.
Just to repeat, you said chapter 9, correct?
Yep, chapters 1 through 9.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so going back to this, where was it? Right, so we talked about pork barrel, where basically they agreed to pass a bill in order to get a project in their district. Okay, and that goes on. A lot of times, Republicans agree or Democrats agree to do something that goes against what they believe in because they want to get some money for their state or district. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you.
So we know that the House, of course, they control spending.
The House and the Senate is the same thing?
No, they're not.
Oh no, the House is the one like in the incumbent
The House
stronger party.
No. Both the House and Senate both have incumbents. The House is 2 years. Congress, the House is 2 years, and the Senate is 6 years. Now the House, they have the power of the purse. They're the ones who approve purchases, and they are the ones that impeach the president. We all know that. Okay, and they also have committees. The members are appointed by the Speaker of the House. That's why the Speaker of the House is very powerful, just like the majority leader of the Senate is also very powerful because they control the Senate. They control the Congress. Now, Senate can ratify treaties and appointments. The Senate can also filibuster, which means that if they don't like a bill, they can decide that they're going to go to Congress and read page from the U.S. government book and the only way you break a filibuster is with 60 votes. Okay, and so Ted Cruz very famously started reading children's books on the House. Strom Thurmond, of course, is the most famous guy.
24
He read
hours.
the entire telephone book A to Z. Okay, now the House, as we know, okay, we already talked about that.
His name is Strom Thurmond.
Right, the Senate.
They have a video of it.
What's that? Oh, everything's video. So I'll go to the website for a second. Hold on.
Strom Thurmond. I want to see that.
Well, that was from earlier in the. Well, don't do that right now. If you need videos, if you go to my resources.
Resources, yeah.
Yeah.
You have all the videos for the crash.
Soul, you're frozen.
Okay.
Nice.
And they're pretty good, actually. So now the Senate, the vice president is the president of the Senate. So what that basically means is no one really liked Betsy DeVos, okay? Betsy DeVos is the person who's the Secretary of Education. And so even some Republicans voted against her, so they had to ask Mike Pence to come in to break the tie, okay? So usually you don't need the vice president to break a tie. But in this case, because there were even some Republicans who voted against her, they actually had to bring her in. Okay.
What did he choose?
Well, he went along with the president. The president wanted Betsy DeVos, of course. I'm just giving you an example of where sometimes the vice president could break a tiebreaker.